So I'm Larissa Naylor. I'm at the University of Glasgow. I'm a biogeomorphologist by training. So I'm interested in the interactions between ecology and, in this case, rock and hard materials. But I have a project at the moment working with a team of partners around the UK, so Natural England, Natural Resources Wales, small SMEs, as well as organisations in Scotland. And we're trying to make a case for greening grey assets that have to remain grey for their primary function. And we're focusing on non-building assets. And so I'm going to explain, what do I mean by green grey? Why is this needed? And how can we do it? And then focus specifically on what we're doing with this project is trying to create a bit of a business case so you can compare your ordinary plywood hoarding, for example, to a green screen. How can you get that kind of across to somebody if you're trying to be a proponent on a project? What is the cost and what is the benefits insofar as we can calculate with the existing data? And so integrated green-grey infrastructure can be thought of greening all of those grey spaces. So green infrastructure definitions often talk about green threading through and around our built fabric. And we're actually turning it on its head and then saying, well, what can we do to the built fabric that's there and grey? How do we enhance the value of that in a green infrastructure sort of way? So the top is what's currently in green infrastructure policy. So you're starting to get an inkling of green bridges turning up in policy documents, an inkling of pocket parks, but it's traditionally about freshwater and soil-based systems, whether they're on land or on buildings. We're talking about greening a whole bunch of other types of infrastructure here. And so the reason for it is the GI approaches traditionally ignore this part. And there's the greyest parts of our cities have the fewest ecosystem services. So there's the greatest net gain from greening those areas. And so this integrated green infrastructure identifies some of those opportunities. And it's importantly, it's not part of GI policy framing at the moment. And so you can do this in a number of ways. You can have temporary measures and interventions, such as a lot of the green screens and things you see here. And you can retrofit things on existing structures. And you can design them in as part of new schemes. You can also build them into strategies. So although the London Ecology Master Plan, which is award-winning, thinking about the spatial ecology of a large organization, in this case the Crown Estate's assets across London, and thinking about greening of those, they could also green the non-building components of their infrastructure and build in some of these things. So we've got a bee bench, so it's a bee that's been designed for solitary bee habitat, and you've got a bee wall on the right hand side. You've got a green bridge. We also have these uses of things like ivy on freestanding walls. And so why do we do this? We can do it for different reasons. We can do it for biodiversity reasons. We can also, here you've got little rock pools fitted on seawalls. So it can be in salty places. It doesn't have to just be in dry, urban, terrestrial places. Rock pools mixed up with rock armor. And you can do it to improve environmental quality. So here, this is in London. They're actually putting green screens to improve air quality locally. It may not deal with air quality in a wide sense, but in a local sense, those children are less impacted by it. But we also can use this kind of infrastructure to start to think about improving asset resilience. So we often think about keeping life off our assets, off the bottom of our bridges. And if you think about the Green Bridge in London, all of the greening was on the top. None of it was on the sides, and none of it was below the water. And there was a complete missed opportunity around where you green. And so deterioration is a leading cause of decay, and it's a large expense for maintaining assets, not just at the coast, but inland. And so we're actually researching tools to improve doability. Oxford University is a project partner, and they've worked with now Historic England to basically look at soft capping, so mini green roofs on their freestanding historic assets, and it's actually improving biodiversity and improving the design life of the structure, and it's way cheaper than the hard capping alternative. And there's a policy push that's about improving asset sustainability and resilience that you can draw on. And so if we look at this, so people generally think about removing ivy from buildings. Historic Scotland still gives grants for people to remove ivy from buildings and walls. This research shows that actually the ivy is beneficial for the wall because it's absorbing pollutants. And so why can't we take this that's been developed in the heritage sector and apply it here and deal with graffiti at the same time and PM10s and provide some bee habitat, for example? And so this project looked at creating this business case because a bunch of barriers were identified through a precursor project with 53 practitioners. They said, well, actually, we couldn't see it to maintain it or inspect it. And there's political barriers to delivery of this. There's a lack of money. It might cost more. People don't want to take the risk in austerity, that kind of thing. So what we're trying to do, sorry about this, it didn't transfer from the Mac and it worked on that screen, is look at what is the ecosystem services, what is the engineering performance, what is the effect on resilience, and what is the motivation to create a framework by which you can compare business as usual to a green intervention. And so we've got this decision framework with 10 case studies and art of the possible to signpost ideas that don't necessarily have good before and after data. And so what we've done is we've created a set of sliders that's the summary of each of these case studies and business cases. It says, what is the overall cost benefit of doing the green intervention compared to business as usual? How does it rate on engineering? So on the far right is positive, far left is negative. With the direct cost, it's different, that's costing less. Against a series of metrics, we've got direct costs, which is generally CapEx costs because OpEx costs aren't available often, and engineering, whether it's got positive, negative, or neutral effect on asset performance, often with expert judgment. And with the environmental, we're only using case studies where we have good before and after or control and intervention data to say what are the benefits for either bees or birds or what have you, and to then use that to come up with a cost benefit. And where possible, we're scaling the benefits to say, well, this is what it would do for 100 kilometers of your linear estate, for example. And importantly, a lot of these case studies don't ever have data quality in them. And so we're adding an element of data quality to say how much of this is from site-specific data, how much of it is expert judgment, and how much of it is wider evidence like on pollinators that we know is important. And so this is just a mocked up example. And it's basically, they're all going to have a summary about how it works, its motivation, and then a lot of data on costs, engineering performance, ecological outcomes. And we're including public amenity as well, where those data exist and this scaling up. And then the art of the possibles look like this. So they're where you have less information, but they sit alongside, because we didn't want to just give one example and a developer or a client or somebody to say, well, we can't use this one because it's not a historic wall fabric, but actually it's been used in other places. So in this case, it's about a verge in the middle of transport, a dual carriageway. And then nested above that will be this business case where we're trying to say, will it work? Does it cost more? What examples can we draw on? Where has it been applied around the UK? And there'll actually be a bit of infographic saying where across the landscape. So in this case, it can be applied on the terrestrial side of coastal defences all the way through into much of the built environment. And there'll be an evidence summary and the key drivers and the secondary drivers for all of the schemes. And so there's another example of an art of the possible with bee walls to give a flavor for what they're going to look like. But the framework will be written up as well. So hopefully people can basically say, I've got this grey intervention I'm normally using. I want to do this green one, and let you know what kind of data you need to do a simple cost benefit analysis, which will be semi-quantitative at best because of the data, but is a step forward to creating a way of providing hopefully a business case to help all of you take some of these ideas and have them be implemented more widely. So thank you.